Welcome back to All About America's Team, brought to you by Delahanty Media. We're here after a fabulous Thanksgiving where the Cowboys were able to get a W on Thanksgiving, get their season total to 8-3. Our total 7-4 and 2-9. So that's quite a jump for both of us. But I'm Ray Nickens, joined with, as always,
Owen DeChico.
and we're just going to jump right into this game. Not a lot of breaking news this week, so we're just going to hop right in, get to the main event of the show. Cowboys were able to beat the New York Giants 27-20, 2 points off my pregame prediction. Doesn't really matter, but just want to throw that out there. And we're able to get that win, and really it wasn't even that close. The Cowboys did turn it on in the second half, went on a 21-0 unanswered run, and the Giants got a late touchdown in the fourth quarter to make it that one score game. But just a couple of stats before we jump right in. Dak Prescott 21 to 30, 261, two touchdowns, two interceptions, bringing his season total to one interception a game. Daniel Jones 21 to 35, 226, one touchdown. Zeke had his best game of the year, 16 for 92 and a touchdown. Tony Pollard wasn't as efficient, 18 for 60. And then Saquon was 11 for 39 and a touchdown. So that's kind of that what I'm sure Owen circled on his stat sheet. Saquon's 11 for 16 or 11 for 39. Giants had four starters out. Not really going to put much substance into that, but hopefully the Cowboys can ride the momentum on the run defense that game into next week against the Colts. But receiving, CD 6 for 106. Gallup had a solid game, his best game of the year, 5 for 63. Schultz had two touchdowns. Slayton 3 for 63. Most of that on that 45-yard Moss over Anthony Brown, and then Richie James 5 for 41 for a touchdown at the end of the game. Um, the Giants were not able to get to Dak Prescott and get him on the ground. That was probably one of the more impressive things of this game, where the Cowboys' offensive line being able to hold their own against a very solid Giants defensive line, keeping Dak Prescott upright, no sacks. Dorrance Armstrong was able to get to Daniel Jones once and Micah Parsons twice. So bringing the Micah Parsons sack total for the season to 12, one behind Matthew Judon at 13. And I mean, other than that, not much for the stat sheet. One of my main keys from this game was the inconsistency of the team. The Cowboys looked very pathetic in the first half and looked very, very good in the second half. And really, honestly, the game came down to the fact that the Giants took the ball away twice and were only mustered up 3 points. So whereas the Packers, when they forced two turnovers on Dak, they were able to get 13 points out of those turnovers, and the Giants were only able to get three. So that was kind of the difference of this game. The Cowboys were able to stay in it early on, keep it within a score, and then they were ahead within 5-6 minutes of the third quarter. But I think I'm going to give my game ball this week out to Zeke, who, I mean, he ran very well. Should have had three touchdowns this game, but they decided to have two short throws to Schultz inside the 5. I guess they just wanted to stat pad for their quarterback, who was at that point 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, but it doesn't really matter. Zeke had a solid game and really kind of reinsert himself into the running back room, because at that point it was teetering on whether or not he was going to remain a main focal point in the offense. Pollard had three straight really solid football games, and so this was kind of Zeke's game to show that he could still be the number one workhorse back. And really, he looked like he had a little burst. Obviously, he's not Tony Pollard, but he had a solid burst to where he could turn a 5-yard run into a 15 or 20. But I mean, I'll kind of save some other stuff that I have to talk about for later on. But as of just the overall game, I thought the Cowboys played pretty much what they've been doing for most of the year. A lot of inconsistent football within the same game, but they were ultimately able to get the win and really just beat up on an inferior opponent. So it was a good win. They have the Colts coming up, Jaguars and Texans as well. So the Jaguars and Colts are not going to be an easy matchup, but they should be able to beat them, and then obviously beat the Texans and get to 11 wins, and that should be well enough for the at least the fifth seed in the conference for the postseason.
Yeah, I definitely agree. My I don't know if you mentioned this, but my play I have two plays of the game. I think that I'm surprised you didn't mention this. Where Dak spun out of a sack from Kayvon Thibodeau. You have called him cement shoes on many occasions, and I thought that spin out of sack. The only other quarterback that I've watched wear a cowboy uniform be able to do that was Tony Romo. Obviously, I was not alive for before that, and Dak has made two plays like that in which I can remember. And it wasn't some great throw like it was several years ago against the Texans, but he was able to run for a few yards and instead of taking a sack, be able to make a positive play. And Jake Ferguson hurdling a Giants defender, I thought that was very very good. It was I I think for the first time, well, obviously we all know that when Jason Witten was a tight end, it was like Jason Witten and no one else. So even when you drafted guys or if you brought in a guy in free agency, it was just Jason Witten, and all the other guys were kind of like they never really saw the field that much. Which is why when he ended up leaving to go to the Raiders, we were really able to see Dalton Schultz fit into his own. And now with Dalton Schultz being injured the last few weeks, and now with him finally being healthy, we're able to see Jake Ferguson, who was a fourth round pick from Wisconsin, I believe, and then Peyton Hendershot, who was an undrafted free agent who did get a rushing touchdown, really able to make it where the tight end group is as deep as it has been in recent years. Dak Prescott, besides the two interceptions, I thought he had a really good game. I know that two interceptions is two more than you'd like. The first play, as Ray talked about, this team has more miscommunication issues than a long distance relationship, and that was that. In my opinion, that's what I'll take the first interception as, not really as an excuse, but just try to give a reasoning as to why. And the second one where Dak just this is several times where Dak has thrown it between the hashes to CeeDee Lamb. This is probably the third or fourth time that it's a contested catch that led to an interception. And it was really good coverage. So Dak should not have thrown it, but it was really good coverage. So you can't really. It was just a really good defensive play. And also, you should not be throwing it where there's only one blue jersey and there are like four white jerseys. So um, I think that Dak far too often tries to play hero ball and tries to, like Ray's mentioned, use his arm to win games, which, I mean, I'm sure that if he really needed to, he could, but I don't think that that's how he plays. I don't really think that you'll ever see a Patrick Mahomes type win or Josh Allen type win with his arm out of Dak. He's more of just consistent, not really the home run. As this year, at least, for the first time in his career, he's put up a significant amount of interceptions. And Ray texted me. He was like, I miss when Dak would rarely throw one, and that was early on in his career. Hopefully, we won't really see as many. I think that these are a lot of forced errors, not really. I wouldn't say that any of these throws were like extremely inaccurate. They were just throws that should not have been made. And Ray, if you have any comments on that, please share. CeeDee Lamb, I think that over the last few weeks is really showing that he can be a real presence in this offense. And like you said, Michael Gallup early on was really a big reason as to why Dallas was able to get it going. And even Greg Olson mentioned, he said that a lot of these wide receivers try to body catch it, and Michael Gallup on several occasions was just able to catch the ball, which was, I don't know if you want to call it inaccurate, but just where the defender couldn't get it, and he was able to reel it in for a catch. And I hope that CeeDee Lamb is able to continue to have this type of production. I don't think that anyone besides if you're a OU fan or a CeeDee Lamb fan would really put him in the top 10 of wide receivers. But if he keeps on having this production and putting up these amount of yards, then I think that it would be difficult to say that he has not developed into that wide receiver one role or whatever you like to call it. And like you mentioned, Ray, the defense did save the offenses behind on multiple occasions. And it was good to see Michael Parsons get 2 sacks. And it was funny because I think a lot of people would say that Andrew Thomas, the Giants left tackle, is one of the best left tackles in football. And Michael Parsons, after the game, went to Twitter to say that I heard that he was the best left tackle in the game, and I was on him the whole game. And he had quite the performance against the best left tackle who had not given up a sack until this game. And I think that going back to what I said before, besides those 2 interceptions, I think Dak had a really good game. I think that they were several, like on the touchdown throw to Schultz, that was really good. It was 3rd and long, and he was able to make a pretty good throw to a window that was not very large. And also one thing before I'll let you get on with it. CeeDee Lamb was a walking highlight reel this last game, and he mentioned that a lot of the defenders were holding onto his left arm, so he decided to try to make a lot of one-handed catches. The one where he caught it in between the one where he caught it with his hand and in between the helmet, that was very nice. And also in the back of the end zone, a lot of people thought that was a catch. And Ray, if you thought it was a catch, we could
It
talk
was
about
not
that
a
a little
catch.
later.
It was not a
Okay.
catch. He got 1 foot in bounds.
He did. He tapped his left foot and his left heel was out of bounds. So it was a very nice catch, but sadly was not a touchdown. And yeah, like Ray said, tale of two halves, and Dallas now has an extended break going into Sunday Night Football against the Colts.
Yeah. To start, the first interception by Dak Prescott was a very, very bad read. The cornerback baited him and jumped that route, and it honestly should have been housed if not for Michael Gallup having the wherewithal to get the tackle early on, because that was one of those pick sixes waiting to happen. I mean, I went on Twitter and I've talked to Owen about this before, whereas every time Dak throws an interception, and I'm sure that this happens at every fan base, so this isn't just Dallas, but when the quarterback throws an interception, we had the Twitter warriors get on and start blaming, no, it was the receiver, or Kellen Moore called a terrible play, or someone ran the wrong route, or he thought it was a free play, blah blah blah. But I mean, at the end of the day, it was a one-on-one throw, and on a corner, on a outside curl route, one of those plays where if the corner is sitting on a play like that, they're going to jump that route whether or not it's a miscommunication or not. And he was sitting, and as soon as Dak threw the ball, as soon as Dak was like threw the ball, that corner was running and basically beat Michael Gallup to the spot. So it was just an overall a solid play by the corner and a bad throw by the quarterback. The play over the middle, I mean, like you said, basically all of Dak Prescott's interceptions have been over the middle, throwing to CeeDee Lamb. And on this throw, I mean, it's very similar to all the other ones. There are 3 or 4 white jerseys in the vicinity. It was also thrown behind him and underthrown as well, so that didn't help. So CD was having to kind of turn his body around and try and reach out for the ball, and there was no way he was going to make that catch. The safety was all over it and picked that off, and that was the only turnover that they got points off of because of the run back. So they were able to get 3 off that. But
Can I comment before
I
you go on?
sure.
So I think that the second interception is a lot more on Dak, but even on the first play, like Greg Olson, who obviously knows a lot more than I do and gets paid more than I obviously, he mentioned that Michael Gallup kind of gave up on the play because he was. I think the whole offense was expecting a flag, and a lot of people were on Twitter were saying that you can't just give up on a play without a flag. So even if you go on the replay, I don't even know what route it was. Michael Gallup never really decides to go back to the ball. And so I obviously the throw should not have been made, but I also think that if a wide receiver gives up on a play, that is also not great. So yes, and I do agree that a lot of people can try to put a lot of like the fault on other players, but if you have guys like Shannon Sharp who have been notorious for whether it's for media or whatever, talking negatively on Dallas and especially Dak Prescott, if you have him who against 2 weeks ago, I think it was when he threw the interception in the end zone to and the interception up the middle where um, CeeDee Lamb just ran the wrong route. When you have a guy like that come to his defense and say that that's on the wide receivers, and I know that you have a lot of respect for Shannon. I think a lot of players do. One of the better tight ends to ever play football. And obviously, not every interception that Dak throws is going to be on someone else. Like the second one should not have been thrown. It was very good coverage and just should not have been thrown. But I do think that the first one was due to several factors, not just Dak throwing it. I think that if he more or less plays the play and does not give up on it, then who knows what the outcome would have been. But that's all that I had to say.
Well, I would not call Shannon Sharp a Twitter warrior fan.
No, I was not
So
saying that he was
I
either.
can
I was
I
just
can
saying
I
that,
can
that
back off
someone.
when I can back off when Shannon Sharp says it's not the player's fault. But when I go on Twitter and I see the um like just some random Twitter names like typical Cowboys fan or Zeke 44 great or these might not even be real or Dak Prescott 44 lifelong Cowboys fan 124 and they're like that pass was there should have been they thought it was a flag it was not the receiver gave up. I'm like okay. I literally watched the play and it was an outside curl and the corner was sitting on it waiting and just
Mhm.
basically was the receiver on the play. So, I
Yeah.
mean, Michael Gallup could have been running the route half heartedly, but at that point, it's his fault because you should never run any play half heartedly unless you hear a whistle. So, that's what they teach you in Little League Pop Warner. So, the fact that he didn't get that memo, that's on him. But the other thing I wanted to go off of was your play of the game was a 3 yard run, which I thought was pretty funny. the
No, it had nothing to do with the run and
the
everything to do with the fact that he escaped the sack. It had nothing to do with the run. It was the fact that he
I
escaped the sack.
well okay, so it was a highlight 3 yard run that I
It
don't know how
nothing to
much
do
it
with the
had.
run.
It
It had
was
everything to do with the fact that he got out of the sack.
and then ran for a yard.
Okay, but it
The
doesn't
the
matter
the
what.
the, the
It
breaking
doesn't
the
matter the
sack was
outcome.
spectacular, but at the end of the day, you got a yard, and
Okay,
I don't. So I thought it was a
so
good
so so
play.
would you
I
rather
was
him get
shocked.
out of the
I was
sack?
just hold on. It was a phenomenal play. I did not expect it to happen, but I just thought it was funny that your play of the game was a 1 yard run. That's all I'm saying. It didn't have a huge impact in the entirety of the game. It was just kind of a 1 yard highlight reel play, which I thought was funny. Um, but that doesn't take away from the spectacularity of the play. I just thought it was funny that the play was a 1 to 3 yard 3 yard run by the quarterback. If you do not watch the play and you go on the box score, like if I were to go on the box score right now and find that play, it would say Dak Prescott 2 yard run. So that's all. That's what I thought was funny. Now the hurdle, that was that the hurdle was pretty fun too, but overall, I don't think either of those plays really had an impact on the outcome of the game. So
Well,
that's all I'm
I
saying. I
was
just thought that
saying
was funny
my
that the
favorite.
play. Well, you
Those were
use the
my
terminology of the play of the game.
yeah.
Was the
Those were my
terminology that
two
you
like
used?
highlight reel. If you want to go like based off of plays that really determined the game, then we can do that. But my because a sack, if Dak takes a sack there, I forget what play it was. That's at least a 5 or 6 yard loss, and that could have completely changed the momentum of the game. And also, let, let's say that Dak does throw the ball, and if no one was really open, let's say he just throws it into people and it's intercepted or it's batted down, or in my opinion, if you have the opportunity to get some amount of yards, you get them. And I'd rather him hold on to the ball than throw it into harm's way.
I'm gonna I'm gonna try and find that. Do you remember what quarter it was?
I do not. I can try to find it.
I mean, I'll find it in a second, but you can talk about some other stuff while I find it. I'll find it pretty quickly.
Okay. Well, yeah. So just to go back, my it was just the plays of the game that I thought were more highlight reel, I guess you could say. Now plays that actually made the game, the throw on in the red zone, I guess you could say it, to Dalton Schultz on third and forever was very important to the game. There was a lot, and in a game where, and also I don't really know if anyone puts any faith into this, but the win probability that ESPN releases, Dallas was always favored to win. It may not have been by a lot, but they were always the favorites to win, which I thought was pretty interesting. Um, the I think that outside, like I said earlier, outside of the 2 interceptions, the game was pretty good. Zeke, it was really nice to see him go for 92 yards, and it's good to see that Zeke and Tony Pollard are having similar amount of carries. I'm not sure if that's because of they're still nursing that knee issue with Zeke or what it is, but it was good to see that both of them had similar amount of carries. And sure, they're not always going to be averaging 4+, but I do think that Pollard was able to get that amount of carries. And I thought that the game, looking at the stat sheet, where the game may look like it was very close, the only reason why it was 28-13 before the Giants had a late touchdown to Richie James on like on a bubble screen or something like that. So, um, as people would say, empty stats or empty calories. That is kind of how that game went. And Dak averaged 8.7 yards per attempt, which is just pretty good. So I thought that overall everyone had a good game, but the team definitely needs to be more consistent going into Indianapolis.
Yeah, the play occurred in the second half on their first drive of the second half. It was a 1st and 10 play, and he scrambled for 4 yards.
Well, and
So
nothing to do with the scramble. I think that even though he was able to, I think that besides the sack, I'd much rather him run for 4 yards than throw it into double coverage or incompletion. Because I'd much rather be 2nd and 6 than 2nd and 10.
I would agree. But yeah, you said something interesting that I think is a great segue into the next thing I kind of wanted to talk about, and that's just the overall some things that concern me after watching this game because there are a lot. Um, so the first thing that kind of bothered me was the penalties. So after this game,
Yes.
like Dallas saved 82 penalties for the year, which is second of all the teams and four behind the Broncos. They had 13 penalties during the game for 86 yards. Really, what that's telling me is that this team is just very undisciplined when it comes to penalties. Um, that's on the coaching. Like the well coached teams are not heavily penalized. You can you can spin that however you want to. I know you've said in the past that it's on the players. It's not the coach's fault that they're giving it the penalties, but that's what you practice in OTAs. You practice technique. You practice discipline of not jumping off sides or getting a false start. And I mean the fact that they had like the holding. I've seen so many defensive holdings from the Cowboys that I've never seen this many defensive holdings from the Cowboys. It seems like every game there's like a defensive holding, and I'm like on a run play by like a lineman. I'm like, how do you get a defensive holding when you're getting held trying to stop the like? It doesn't make sense to me. But like I see so many of those. There's so many false starts, so many holding penalties. It just drives me absolute crazy. And as we saw last year, the Cowboys they got into the playoffs and they had their worst penalty game. They had their record-setting penalty game and they lost. So that's just very concerning. The Cowboys once again are heavily penalized. They're on their way to be the number one penalized team again. And I mean, you could beat up on all the sorry teams you won in the regular season, but eventually you're going to play the 49ers or the Bucks or
The
um
Bucks looks pretty sorry right now. Besides, like winning that, they just lost to the Browns.
yeah, well, they're probably going to win their division because their division is sorry. And then I picked a Tom Brady team over a Dak Prescott team any day of the week. So, and I mean, I can pull up the penalty totals right now.
Yeah, it was the Cowboys have 7 accepted penalties in the first half. They're second most in any half this season. They had 8 in the second half in week 6 against the Eagles at the Eagles, and the Giants had 4 penalties, and that was as of 6:06 Eastern time on Thanksgiving.
So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have 23 fewer penalties than the Dallas Cowboys through 12 weeks.
It is an issue. And even Dak mentioned about it that the team has to be more disciplined and that it's something that they're going to get right. So I'm glad that it's no longer the refs. It is holding players accountable. So
Well, at the end of the day, the only penalty Dak can get is intentional grounding and delay of game. And I'm pretty sure that he hasn't given up a single one of those penalties. So like it needs to be I don't mean he can say all he wants that we need to get it fixed and we're playing on disciplined football, but it's got to come from somebody who's actually like a Zach Martin or
well,
a
Zach Martin hasn't gotten a holding call, and even people were like, eh. He hasn't got he has more
but
Pro Bowls than
exact I'm
he has more
saying
Pro Bowls than he does
hold on,
penalties.
Yuri, hold on. Let me hold on. I'm saying that since he's at a position that is one of the most penalized positions in football, the offensive line. That's where most of your other than corner or in the secondary, that's where you're going to get the most of your penalties. He is the blueprint, and he's got to hold everyone else on that offensive line accountable and say we can't be giving up these many penalties, these many holdings. We can't be getting false starts. We can't be pushing our offense back because that hurts the team. It hurts the
Yeah.
offense, loses momentum. It's got to come from him and not necessarily the quarterback who's not the one, actually committing the penalties. Now if it's coming from like turning the ball over, then that's a different story. But this is penalties, and Dak Prescott is he can be the one who addresses it, but it's got to be coming from a Zach Martin, who's the leader of that offensive line. But
Well, he
that's
is a
kind of
spokesperson for the team. And I don't really think that unless Zach Martin has like I don't really think that he'll ever be out there talking to the media, unless it's like a specific press conference for him. So who knows? I'm sure that Zach Martin being a captain of the team and being a leader of the team, I'm sure he talks to them internally. But Dak and Mike McCarthy are the only two people that really get to speak to the media post game, I think. So yes, I would much rather it be a guy like Tyler Smith saying that he needs to get his stuff together because he did have
oh,
several penalties.
I don't really mean like talking to us. I mean like internally.
No, I'm
Those
sure it does
conversations
happen.
need to happen. But I,
It's
by the way,
it's
I
not
don't
really
want to.
doing anything.
By the way, I don't want to hear Mike McCarthy talk about penalties because he's the reason why this is such a penalized football team. Um,
Well, I do agree that they need to that he needs to do more, but I don't. I think that it's up to the players to really. Um, I mean, unless it's like technique stuff or lining up, like it was a few weeks ago with our third round pick or rookie, then yeah, sure, that's on coaching and that's also on the player.
well,
But
I don't know if you did you play like Pop Warner.
I did not play football much. I didn't play football at all besides
Okay,
flag football.
so when we and I'm sure that they even do this in the NFL, but in seventh, eighth grade, we'd have a drill for offense and defense, and you'd line up on the ball, and it would be a watch the ball drill, and the coach would say a lot of ridiculous baloney, but you got to watch the football, and when the football moves, you run, and if you jump off sides, then you're running a lap. So that's like I'm sure they do that in the NFL. That's the discipline the offensive line to go to not jump off sides off a fake cadence. Holding, I'm sure they do so many different technique stuff with the offensive linemen. But yet again, the Cowboys are once again up there in the penalties. So there's some disconnect between what they're being taught in OTAs, training camp, all that, and what's actually being produced on the field. And I'm going to put that more on the coaching staff than the players. Because at the end of the day, the players are just doing what they're being taught by the coaching staff. So and when you got a guy like Tyler Smith who's coming out as one of the more penalized players in college football last year, and he's once again giving up a lot of penalties this year. That's on coaching. Like coaching has got to get that figured out. And like I can blame the players for doing dumb stuff, dropping passes, throwing interceptions, running the wrong route. But penalties are on like discipline and coaching and fundamentals. And this team is being the second straight year and being given up the most penalties. Like that's terrible. And like I can give the coaching staff credit for a lot of things, but I'm gonna hold their feet to the fire with penalties.
Yeah, as you should. It's something that needs to be fixed. And hope the good thing is that Dallas, besides going up against a lot of run dominant teams in the next few weeks, they're also going up against teams that um, I think that it'll be good to be able to just to see really how this team goes over the next few weeks. Because honestly, right now we have no idea who Dallas will be facing in the postseason, and going up against these next few teams who are very run dominant, who have really good running games. It'll be good to be able to fix, like you said, the defensive tackle Carlos Watkins back-to-back games, defensive holdings. It'll be able to fix a lot, and with going up against the Jaguars, going up against Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker, it'll be good for Tyler Smith to be able to go up against the number one pick, and it'll be good for um our whole offensive line to be able Terrence Steele to be able to go up against guys like that. Who Terrence Steele's having a really good year this year and will be getting himself a very nice check in the offseason. Hopefully from Dallas, but from whatever team. So it'll be good. And if these issues persist over the next month and a half, then we're gonna be in a heap of trouble. But hopefully, honestly, I'm just looking forward to seeing how this team responds because they are extremely inconsistent, and that's not really going to work, like you've mentioned, when you walk into a away playoff game, or if you somehow steal the East going up against a home playoff game or having a home playoff game. So it's an I don't know. I guess I'm excited to see how they respond, but I'm also scared that this matter can get worse. But I think it'll be good for the team to see how they respond. Adversity was always a big word that Jason Garrett would use, and this is a form of adversity. Dallas, only team they can beat Dallas right now is Dallas, and Dallas is doing a pretty good job of beating Dallas.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty good segment into the next thing that concerns me. being the turnovers. Dallas, um, the quarterback is on pace to throw an interception per game, which would get him at his total at. I mean, I know he missed 4 or 5 games, so that would give him to like a 13 or 14 interception total for the year, which is not terrible. But I mean, you're giving the ball away once every game, and in the postseason when you're playing, I mean, most likely the Cowboys are going to go up and face a team like the 49ers. And the 49ers are a very disciplined team that limit turnovers. And like if the Cowboys turn the ball over against the 49ers are going to get points because that's just how good they are. They're going to run it up down your throat with McCaffrey, or they're going to hit you with a pass to Debo or Kittle, and they're going to go up and down the field and score. So I feel like Dak Prescott is not a quarterback that has consistently been a turnover happy quarterback. So I'm not necessarily concerned that he's going to stay at that one interception a game, but it is something to monitor because he's had 3 games this year where he's thrown 2 interceptions in the game, and so that's just something to monitor whether or not he continues to throw it over the middle to CeeDee Lamb and it continues to get intercepted because either CeeDee Lamb did not run the right route or he threw it into triple coverage over the middle of the field. So at the end of the day, maybe the Dak just used to not throw the ball to CeeDee Lamb over the middle anymore because more often than not, it's going to get intercepted because somebody's not doing what they need to be doing. But that's a joke because obviously most of the routes are going to be over the middle because that's where they have their most chunk plays is an over the middle throw. So I just think overall what I've noticed is when the Cowboys start to get a little pass happy, that's when their turnovers typically happen. And to start off the game, the Cowboys were throwing it a lot more than I expected them to. And that's what kind of stalled the offense. There was 2 interceptions. I don't think they scored
they didn't score a touchdown until
they
the
didn't
second
score a
quarter.
touchdown in
the first quarter. Dallas needs to do a better job.
Yeah, it was 13-7. Yeah, so they scored 1 touchdown in the first half, and I was coming out of the second half. They ran the ball a lot more, had a lot more success, and they ultimately scored 3 straight touchdowns. So when the Cowboys are a balanced football team, they don't turn the ball over. When they start getting a little pass happy, that's where the turnovers come because I'm sure I'm not saying that Dak is trying to be something he's not, but I'm sure he sees Patrick Mahomes with his 29 touchdowns and on pace for 5,000 yards, and he sees the throws that Justin Herbert makes and Josh Allen make, and he wants to be considered among those guys, and he starts trying things that he shouldn't try, and then all of a sudden he has 2 interceptions, and he's like, oh, let's start playing what we're good at. So I'm not saying that he's trying to do that, but I'm just saying like he's human. He probably sees what other quarterbacks are doing, and I'm sure he wants to be an MVP. So
I don't. I mean,
but
I understand where you're coming from, but I do think that the whole first half was due to Dallas not really respecting the Giants. They went forward on 4th and 1 in their part of the field, and they didn't run the ball. It was they threw it. I think that Dallas needs to do a better job of respecting their opponents because if you play like that against the Bills or the Eagles or any team that has respect around the league, you're not going to win. And I think that if Dallas plays that better,
my devil's advocate question is why are you not respecting a division opponent? Because the Cowboys should know better than anybody that the division matchups are going to be your most challenging. Because even like the Giants, they only had 1 starting offensive lineman. Their defense was pretty banged up. Their secondary was banged up, and like the Cowboys should know better than anybody that Dak Prescott should know better than anybody. He got beat by Carson Wentz, who's now a backup to a community college QB. He got beat 16-9 by that player with practice squad wide receivers. So nobody on that team, none of the leaders on that team should take anyone for granted. So I don't
I'm
really
not
understand.
saying that the leaders did. I'm saying that the play calling did not. It was like they were playing with their food because it's not normal for you to go for it on 4th and 1 in on the first few drives of the game
Well,
in
I mean,
your
the Eagles
own.
do it all the time. They just run a QB
Okay,
sneak and get it
but
90% of the time.
Nick Sirianni is. I'm saying just unlike for Dallas and Nick Sirianni and the Eagles can do whatever they want. But I'm just saying that I unlike Dallas to do something like that. And obviously they have a very good defense and their defense was able to save them. And they only gave up a field goal for it, but it's just not something that I would like to see them do in the future unless it's whatever. But um I don't really think that it was smart to start off the game like that. I think that you're asking to lose if you do something like that. Um and it's another thing that's kind of a segue. I hope Michael Gallup takes this game and can kind of go more into his own. I know that several players um there were several people, and even with Odell Beckham, that said that when you tear your ACL, you're not gonna hit the ground running. You have to like get a feel for the game and trust your knee again. And I think that this past week was the first time that I really saw Michael Gallup trust himself, and I'm not sure if that was because they were force feeding him the ball or if that was because he was the main target that was open. But it was good to see that. I know that Ray talked in the beginning of the season that Michael Gallup is expendable.
By
I
the way, I
think that
still think that.
okay. Well, I think that is. I think that if you take Michael Gallup off the team right now and only have CD Lamb, you're rarely going to win a game because you're going to be able to double or
Well,
triple cover
of
CD
course,
Lamb.
of course, if you replace him with nothing,
Yeah, but
they're gonna have a problem. I'm saying if you replace him with something,
uh-huh.
then you're gonna get you can get 5 for 63 out of a lot of receivers.
Yeah, it wasn't just 5 for 63 though. It was the types of catches. It was the third down catches that he made that were very crucial. And like you said on stat sheet, just gonna say 5 for 63, but he was a big reason why that offense was churning in the beginning. And it wasn't churning much, but he was a big reason why it was going. If you tell me that you're gonna in 2 years you're gonna get rid of Michael Gallup and get the Ohio State receiver. I forget his name. His father.
Marvin Harrison
Yes.
Jr.
If you tell me that you're going to replace him with him in 2 years, then I'll sign me up. I will take it. But if Dallas continues to be on this 20 plus draft pick, Dallas is not going to spend big money on a wide receiver. I doubt. And the reason why they made this deal was because they can cut him in 2 years and there'll be no draft hit, or there'll be no cap hit. So sure, if they want to get him in 2 years, they want to get rid of him in 2 years, sure. But I do think that the contributions that he makes are extremely important, and I think that he is the best catcher of the football on Dallas right now. I think that he makes better catches than CD does. Obviously, CD put on a highlight reel this past week, but I just think that Michael Gallup, being a third round pick coming out of Colorado State, I think that he has a significance on this offense, and Dak Prescott trusts him dearly when he's healthy, when both are healthy, and when he needs to go to someone.
Can I read a couple wide receivers coming out of the draft this year?
I mean, you're not going to get either of them because Dallas is going to draft a corner.
I wouldn't be shocked if the Cowboys drafted a receiver, but
Well,
we
they might
have
have to if they don't get Odell.
we have we have Quentin Johnston out of TCU, Jordan
Uh-huh.
Addison out of USC. I don't know who that guy is. I'm not going to say. Jalen Hyatt out of Tennessee. Keyshawn Boett out of LSU, solid. Jackson
or,
Smith out of Ohio State,
or a lot of
Josh
guys.
Downs, North Carolina, Cedric Tillman, Tennessee, Zach Flowers, Boston College, don't really know him. Raheem Jarrett out of Maryland, solid. Marvin Mims, stay away from Oklahoma. And then Jonathan Mingo out of Ole Miss. So quite a lot of talent from the SEC. We see what Hyde's doing in Tennessee, and I mean they're that's kind of what I'm saying. You have Michael Gallup who does a lot of solid, great things for the Cowboys, like you said. But you can go in the draft and you can take a guy at round 17 or 18 where the Cowboys live. That's where they kind of live when it comes to the draft picks the last 20 years. And you're going to get a solid, competent wide receiver in the first round that can do that. The expectations are can do what Michael Gallup has been doing for the last 5 years, which has been a complementary wide receiver to the wide receiver one.
And then what happens if you do draft a guy and they underperform, and then you're stuck?
Then that's on the Will McClay for picking the wrong guy.
Well, at the end of the day, I don't really think that Will McClay picks the guy. I just think that he is the draft guy, and he kind of gives the stuff. I'm not in the war rooms. I don't really know, but you and I both know that the Joneses pick the players. I don't think that Will McClay has a. I think that because as you and I both know, if Jerry Jones, if he was the sole person making the decisions, we would not have Zach Martin. We would have Johnny Manziel, and that would have been a disaster. We would have a bunch of holes on this team. Dallas, only reason why they got CeeDee Lamb is because he fell in their laps, and I thought that he was. I was very surprised that he left there. I thought that the Jets were going to take him instead of taking Becton. And sure, I think that Gallup, he has this game, and if he continues to play this way, then I think that he will cement himself on this team for a while. But if his ACL kind of gets the better of him, and if he doesn't play like we are used to seeing him play in the future, then sure, you are, I mean, more than comfortable getting rid of him. But I think to say that he's expendable is not smart, and it's not giving him the respect that he deserves, because coming out of the draft, he was a third round pick, and he didn't really come into his own until Amari Cooper was traded for. And then as soon as that happened, you really saw Michael Gallup play well. And like I said earlier, Greg Olson said that a lot of players try to catch it with their chest, which you and I both know Amari Cooper did on several occasions. Terrence Williams did on several occasions. So it's nice to see that he is more of a, I'm going to go get it and then be stronger than you and bring it in. And coming off of an ACL, this being his first true game back, or this being his first like welcome back game, I'm not, the first thing that came to my mind was not, let's get rid of him in 2 years. I think that he has a role on this offense, and I think that if you were to replace him with a rookie in a year or two, unless you're bringing in some veteran guy, because the only true veteran that's been on the wide receiver room for several years are Noah Brown and Michael Gallup, because CD is a 3-year guy, so you're gonna need some type of just not like old people to go in there, or not old, but just veterans to go in there. And I think that if you were to replace him any sooner than his contract deems to do that, then
Then what?
I think that I don't know. I'm shocked that you are so ready to get rid of him.
I'm not ready to get rid of him. I'm just saying that he's expendable.
I mean, I don't.
I mean, if we're going based off the receiver talent that's come out of the draft in the last 5 years, all of them are better than most of them have had better production than Michael Gallup has. So
Yeah, if
I
if you want to pull up games where he doesn't have a calf strain, and when when he doesn't tear his ACL, or
Well, then based on injury
because
alone, you
like
should be trying to move off from a player that's injury prone and get a young and to get
I'm
another
not
player.
saying he's injury prone. That's not what I'm saying.
You
But
just use it as an excuse.
well, I'm not saying it's an excuse. I'm saying that the games outside of him being injured, because Dallas is never going to be in a position to draft Jamar Chase. They're just
Well,
not
they were in
going
a
to be.
position to draft Justin Jefferson, who is,
Okay,
by
and
the way,
coming out of the draft.
Justin Jefferson is now the all-time wide receiver in yards in his first 4 years. He
Okay,
passed
and you know what also
Randy
happened?
Moss and
Dallas has locked up Justin Jefferson the last 2 to 3 times they've played him. And I know if Justin Jefferson was a Cowboy putting up 33 yards against a team that is a division rival, or sorry, conference rival, you would come in here and be like, I don't care what he's done in the past. He needs to show up. Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback and he does a lot of yards. And the fact that I don't care if the offensive line does not hold up. In the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes still got a lot of flack for that loss. And Joe Burrow, offensive line was in shambles, and he still made it. So if you're that guy, then
because they're
you
better
make the
quarterbacks
plays that
than
need to be
Kirk
happen.
Cousins.
And I know that, but I'm saying that people have mentioned that he is on par, or maybe even better than Mr. Prescott. And I'm saying that it is not, if he is that guy and Justin Jefferson is that guy and he's played very well. But if you're going into it, if you, I saw something and I'll have to double check it, but Justin Jefferson said something to the effect of, we're going to win the game. If you are that confident, you cannot put up 33 yards. You cannot go up against a cornerback who is known for being beat on double moves and everything like that, and only get 33 yards. I don't care what he did against the Bills. That was a great catch, but the Dallas game was very important for the Vikings, and the fact that he did not show up is upsetting. And coming out of the draft, I'd assume that CeeDee Lamb was more of a coveted prospect than Justin Jefferson. Obviously, hindsight is 2020. If we go back, Justin Jefferson will probably be a top 10 pick, and CeeDee Lamb would not. He would have fallen to where he did in the draft. But I'm saying that Justin Jefferson, if you're gonna say that he's all this, then and if people don't view Diggs as being all that great, then getting 33 yards against a wide receiver playing cornerback isn't all that great.
So I just need you to get you on the record. You would have still taken CeeDee Lamb over Justin Jefferson.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay,
I think
just making sure
no,
because
I
like
think
I
that it would
said,
be stupid to say that.
like
But
I
all I'm
said,
saying is that
Justin Jefferson, whether you like it or not, is number one of any wide receiver of all time in yards in his first 4 years.
and that's great.
Which means
And
he is
I'm
the
very
best.
happy.
Which means he is number one, which is Randy Moss, Julio Jones, Michael Irvin, uh, Larry Fitzgerald, like anybody, you throw anybody out there, anybody that you can think of who is a Hall of Fame wide receiver, Justin Jefferson is number one. Now, I don't know where
And that's
CeeDee
great.
Lamb is on that list, but he is not even close to number one. So,
yes, it's difficult to be anywhere near a guy who puts up 600 yards. And obviously, like I mentioned before, Justin Jefferson coming into the Vikings offense was the number 3 priority.
and he became the
Dalvin
first
Cook,
Justin Jefferson
Dalvin
was
Cook,
number
and
one
Adam
on the.
Thielen.
Justin Jefferson was the number one target within 3 weeks.
Okay, and that's great. All I'm saying is that CeeDee Lamb was not that coveted guy going into the depth chart, because you had Zeke, Amari Cooper, who was a proven guy, Michael Gallup, who was a proven guy. You had Dalton Schultz, who was just a tight end in general, because when you and I both know that Dak loves his tight ends. And then you had CD. CD had several issues coming out of the draft. Drops were an issue for him, and I'm not going to say that Justin Jefferson was this great person, because I didn't really watch. I'm not a big college guy. I didn't really watch either of them play all that much. I would have been able to see CeeDee Lamb play if he played against Baylor, but he did not play. Um, I all I know is the Vikings were very happy to get Justin Jefferson, and the Eagles drafted Jalen Rager. That is all that matters in this conversation.
And the Eagles are number one in the division.
Okay, the Eagles also. That's great and all, but Dallas was number one in the division last year too, and look how that worked out. You gotta win a Super Bowl, or you gotta do something. You gotta. Jalen Hurts gotta do something important. You're not gonna be able to throw. Give me 1 second. Let me just pull. Let me pull this one thing up. You are not going to be able to beat a team in the playoffs where your quarterback is throwing 153 yards. If he runs for 157 yards, which is insane, then sure. But just solely based off throwing the ball, you are not going to be able to beat a team running that much. Because eventually, a defensive coordinator is going to figure out how to stop Jalen Hurts and stop Miles Sanders. 360, that's a lot of yards. But eventually, there's going to be a team that's able to stop that. And then you're going to ask Jalen Hurts to throw the ball. I'm just saying that's not sustainable. If the
Well,
running game continues,
at least the Eagles know what they're good at and don't try to be something that they're not.
and
So
what does Dallas try to? Their running game has been very solid. Obviously, you're going to have to switch things up at times. I don't think that Dallas tries to be. Dallas was very inconsistent in the first half. I think that that was just dumb on their part. I don't think that they try to be any team that they're not. They're just inconsistent. They're the most inconsistent team in the National Football League. They don't try to be anyone that they're not. They are inconsistent and they play inconsistent every single week. That is what they do. They don't try to be the Packers. They don't try to be.
I wouldn't want to try and be the Packers, by
Okay,
the
well,
way.
I'm saying Dak doesn't try to be any quarterback that he's not. He is inconsistent, and that is who he is. When he plays well against the Vikings, he's top 10. I'm sure we can go back in the numbers or whatever and make a more decisive, definitive list than that. But when Dak plays like this, he is nowhere near that. So this team is inconsistent and just terrible.
By the way, I didn't even bring up the Cowboys. I just was saying that the Eagles know what they are. They're a running team. They utilize that well. They use their quarterback, who is a durable quarterback who can run, and they use their running backs, and they beat you running the football. And if they need to pass, that's why they acquired A.J. Brown, and they have Devontae Smith, and they have weapons. And we'll see if they can utilize that when teams gear up to stop the run. But as of right now, no team has been able to really stop the Eagles' running attack. And if we saw with the 49ers made all the way to the Super Bowl running the football and Jimmy Garoppolo throwing it 8 times in every playoff game that he played in. So,
but did he win?
He did not win, but he got to the Super Bowl, which is what you said. So,
Okay.
if the Eagles are in a good spot to where they have a solid defense, they run the ball well, and they have skilled talent positions.
Do you think that the Eagles will represent the NFC in the Super Bowl this year?
No, I think the 49ers will.
Okay. And then Jalen Hurts can get his $50 million contract for throwing the ball off, for throwing 153 yards, and it'll be great. I am very much looking forward to the Christmas Eve game. If Jalen Hurts does that against Dallas, I will come back that Monday and cry. But I think they'll be okay.
Okay, we'll see who you pick. Because I have a feeling you're going to.
If you were to pick right now, who would you pick to win that game?
I would take Philly. Because Philly are the better coach team and the more disciplined team and the better team.
So only beating the Colts by 1 is great. Barely. I mean, yes, this game was go them, but they lost to the Commanders. They barely beat the Texans. They barely beat the Colts. Sure, Nick Sirianni is the perfect Eagles coach. He's that we did that for Frank Reich, and he gets the crowd going, and he's probably the most hated coach in the NFL. But
I mean,
I'd
you
like to
can
see
blabble
them.
on about Nick Sirianni
I'm
all you
not
want, but at the
blabbling on.
end of the day, he's winning, and the team is, and he has the locker room, and they get it done, and they execute what they need to do, and I mean, their quarterback is an MVP candidate right now, and their running attack is one of the best in football. So,
And he's
like,
been
you
the
can,
best in football the last 2 years, but that didn't really do much. This a big reason as to why they made this jump is because they have AJ Brown now.
and they got him in free agency, and that's
They
kudos to them for for getting the player that for going into free agency,
they
grabbing a
traded
well
for
known
him.
guy, going
They
into
traded for
free
him on draft
agency.
night.
Oh,
They
well, never
traded their
mind.
first round pick to
They
him, and then
traded
they
their
got
first
Traylon
round pick
Burks.
for AJ Brown, and yeah. And by the way, I remember when you were like, "That was a terrible pick. He is injury prone, and he is going to be a bust."
Has he been injured this year? No. So it is
No,
good
he has not been injured,
because
but
players, because he has not been injured and he's been playing well. But an issue with him in Tennessee, if I do remember, was injuries, and I'm glad that he's healthy, and it's been great. But I also know that this same Eagles team barely beat the Cowboys when they were up several points in the first half. And if you want to talk about great coaching and all that stuff, then if you're a great coach, how do you let a team that you're up 20-3, how do you only win by 9 points if you're up 17? If that's great coaching, if I know Mike McCarthy did that, you'd be livid.
the Eagles have 60 penalties, and the Cowboys have
I wasn't
Eagles
talking
have
about penalties.
27 fewer penalties than the Cowboys. So
And
they are a
that's
much more
great.
disciplined football team than the Dallas Cowboys.
Nothing that I said had anything to do with being disciplined. It has everything to do with the fact that they were up 20-3 and they only won by 9 points. That's not, if he's a great coach, then those things don't happen. Great coaches don't allow their team to give up or just to not take the team for granted in the second half, because you and I both know in that game, late in the game when the Eagles needed to respond, they ran all over Dallas. If you're a great coach and if you're that guy, then I'm sorry, you don't let your team.
Wait. Did you say when the Eagles needed to do it, they ran it all over Dallas?
Yes, what I'm saying is that if you're up by 17 points, there should be no reason late in the fourth quarter to get a drive like that. You should have been that game should have been over. You're going up against a backup quarterback who's thrown 3 interceptions. You should win by multiple scores, not just two, or you should barely two. You should win by a lot more than that. And barely beating, like I said, losing to the Commanders on a lot of interceptions, fumbles, whatever you want to call it, barely beating the Colts and acting like you just won the Super Bowl.
By the way, just a off topic, the Commanders are a wild card team who've won 5 in a row.
All that I understand that. What I'm saying is that when they beat them, then that was a
I
major
don't, but
upset, and
I
they
don't
were
really
on the
understand
outside
what
looking in.
I don't understand what point you're trying to make.
The point that I'm trying to make is that we have Dallas lost to the Packers and they beat the Packers, but barely beating the Texans is not this great win. If Dallas loses or if Dallas barely wins, then I'll come in here and I will say that I was wrong. Losing to the Commanders when Cooper Rush beat the Commanders, the Colts, and we'll see this Sunday. If the Colts beat Dallas, then I'll come in here and I will say I will apologize profusely. They go up against the Titans, who are, I'd assume, are a playoff team, a good team. They go up against the Giants, the Bears, Dallas. They go up against the next few weeks, pretty good teams. But they end the schedule with not so great teams. So it will obviously be it will be interesting to see what happens. And if they go into the playoffs and if they win a lot of games and if they win the Super Bowl, then I will come in here and I'll say that I was wrong.
But what
But
are you wrong about?
I was wrong about the fact that I do not take the Eagles seriously.
Oh, okay. So that's the point. You're not taking them seriously, but you picked them to win the division over the Cowboys.
Yes,
and you've been
I
campaigning
picked them
all
to win the division more on the
you've been
fact I did not
campaigning.
agree. I picked them to win the division more because of the moves that they made, and I did not believe that Dallas would be able to beat them out given the departures that they had over. It was not because I thought they were going to be this great team. I thought that was because their schedule was easy. They made better moves than Dallas did. They continue to make better moves than Dallas did,
They
and
continue to
Dallas
play better than
and sure that they have played sure, but I don't think, like I said, I don't think that throwing for 100 and under 200 yards, that is not sustainable when you have to go up against the 49ers or any team that that is good. Because in the Packers game, they put a backup quarterback in Jordan Love from several. Yeah, it's it just I'm looking forward to seeing where this team can go, and if they can throw the ball at a more high power rate. Because if you're one dimensional, then that's not a recipe for success.
I don't even
And
think the Eagles are one dimensional because
well, they gave up
they
100
don't they're
rushing
not
yards. So their run defense isn't all that great either. So they can't. So their run defense being an issue is not great, and I know Dallas is an issue, so I'm not one to speak, but I just it'll be interesting to see how things go. That's all that I have to say.
okay. Well, way back when we picked the divisions, you sided with the Eagles and I picked Dallas. And my reasoning behind that was the Cowboys have a better quarterback than the Eagles do. And the Eagles quarterback has made leaps and strides as you would expect your quarterback to make when you bring in talent at wide receiver. It's the
And
same
Dak
thing
did
with
the
Tua.
same thing.
He did, but not this year.
Okay, well, they didn't bring in a wide receiver of
You're
AJ
right.
Brown's
You're,
level. They got rid
that's
of
what
a
I'm.
wide receiver
That's what
that
I'm
was on
saying.
AJ Brown's level.
I'm saying Jalen Hurts, like Tua, has made a big leap at the quarterback position for his team when they brought in talent. So that's made the Eagles a way better football team than they were last year because they were playing with an inconsistent quarterback. So now the Eagles, their strength has always been running the football, and what they're doing is they are not trying to be something they're not by turning into a throwing team. They are throwing when they need to. They are having success. Jalen Hurts has thrown 17 touchdowns and has limited his interception total to 4, I believe. It could be 5, I'm not entirely sure. But he has done most of his damage on the ground, along with the running game. So, you saying that they cannot win with a quarterback throwing for 189 yards, they're not really trying to throw for 300 yards. They're trying to run it down your throat. And their expectation is if we need to throw it for that many yards, we will. If you go back in the year, which I will really quickly, right before we wrap this up, because we are getting close to an hour or over an
I know
hour.
that Dak
But
has not thrown for
but
that many yards,
if
but
you go back if you go back into the
he threw for 333 against the Vikings. That is good.
who
He
did
threw for three Hurts. He threw back to back 300s in week 2 and week 3. He threw for 204 against the Jaguars. He threw for so he had more 300-yard games than Dak. So good for him.
but that's all that it's not about whether or not he's better than Dak. It's only saying that he's proven that he can throw for those
Yes.
bigger yard games with the talent he has around him, but they're not needing to do that because they can win running the football.
All that I'm
So
saying is that
I
if
have
they get into the
confidence.
playoffs and if they are not able to run the ball, I'm saying that they could be in some trouble. That's all that I'm saying. That is all that I'm saying.
I mean, that's not necessarily what has been. Yes, any team can be in trouble if they're not able to run the ball, but they have shown that they can get production out of their passing game with
In
their
weeks
quarterback.
2 and week 3. Obviously, I didn't look at the rest of the games, but that was week 2 and week 3 against a bad Commanders team and at the time a bad Vikings team. But I'd love to have this conversation on Friday.
He's had 7 games over 200 yards passing, which is
That's splendid.
the benchmark of quarterbacks. Dak Prescott, when the Cowboys are successful, Dak Prescott lives around the 225 to the 275 yards passing a game. And Hurts has shown that he can do that. But they don't necessarily need to do that if they're running the ball for 300 yards in single games.
Yes,
So
you are
that's
right.
all. It's the only point I'm making is
You
you
are
don't
right.
need to be a pass happy team and throw for 300 yards and be spectacular with your receivers when you're running the ball well. If the Eagles evidently get into a game where their running game is not working, then they have the skill and the talent and the quarterback to where they can get some stuff going in the passing game. So we shouldn't just throw all of our chips in the middle of the table and say, oh, they're gonna lose if they can't run, because they have 3 complementary solid talent in the wide receiver room, tight end room, whatever that can get open and produce. So I mean,
Yes.
that's all I'm saying. But as for the Eagles game or whatever, I think it's going to be a very is it in it's in Dallas. It's going to be a very tight game, and whoever doesn't turn the ball over is probably going to win. So as of right now, that favors the Eagles, but it's going to be it'll be interesting. But we can wrap up the show there because I know that you got to run places.
We can continue this conversation on Friday. But thanks everyone for listening, and I'm sure that the end conversation about the Eagles was not what y'all thought was going to happen when you tuned in, but yeah, we hope that y'all have a great week coming off of Thanksgiving and looking forward to or transitioning to the Colts at 7:20 Central Time, which will be interesting. So, my name is Owen Chico, follow along with,
Ray Nickens.
and this is all about America's team. And have a great rest of your week, y'all.
Peace out, guys. Go Cowboys.